The Jewish Sound, your Jewish travel heritage guide, Hugh Raichlin, exclusively on 20 High.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Hugh Reichlin's Jewish Heritage Travel Guide series. And I'm delighted to be on 20 High and to be on the wonderful wavelengths of Isaac Rez, the South African phenomenon who's known as our walking encyclopedia, particularly of the Jewish history of South Africa. It's really a pleasure and a privilege to be able to have a slot on his radio station. Today we're going to be talking about the Jews of India. And India is a most fascinating country. In fact, it's quite topical in Israel at the moment because our Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has struck up a wonderful warm relationship with the Prime Minister of India, Mr. Narendra Modi. And there is a beautiful photograph of Prime Minister Netanyahu and Prime Minister Modi on the beach in Israel. And there was a wonderful welcome for Mr. Netanyahu when he visited India. And as we know, India today is probably one of the most powerful countries in the world, and certainly coming up in the world in terms of technology, in terms of its economy and its contribution to the world. In fact, India today is becoming known as a destination for what they call medical tourism, where people are coming from all over the world to India for first-class medical treatment at a fraction of the cost of what it is in other parts of the world. There was somebody that is from Britain, and he told me that his books of account for his business are written up in India. He emails somebody in India, they get all the information, all the raw data, and they put it together and they give him a set of books at the end of it. So we really are living in a global village, and I suppose that's part of the reason that I have become so inspired with Jewish travel. I first started traveling in 1996 when I was invited by the Jewish Agency to go to Poland. It was a place that I'd never imagined I would visit. And it opened my eyes to the fact that if you get on an aeroplane, you can actually come face to face with history. And all of a sudden, all the information which I was restricted to obtaining from books and movies, etc., I was now seeing in the flesh, so to speak. I saw Auschwitz, I saw the gas chambers, I saw the crematoria, and I saw the bunkers in which the Jews were held during the Holocaust. And that's when I realized the power of travel, because there is nothing like experiencing something physically to really integrate the impact that these historic moments that have happened throughout our history, how they have impacted on us as a Jewish people. And I believe that everything that the Jewish people have experienced wherever they are in the world has gone into our DNA and is part of our Jewish psyche. So if we really want to understand ourselves, I believe that it's incumbent on each of us to understand where we come from and what are the roots of the Jewish people. And if there is one people that has really traveled the globe, that have been global travelers for centuries, it's the Jewish people. As we know, we started with Abraham in Ur-Khazdim in Iraq. And so, in other words, we're a Middle Eastern people. But since then, we have been known, as it's famously said, the wandering Jews. And I think that there was a reason for that. The reason was that we've had an amazing and an enormous impact on the whole world. And as we know, Jews are known as Or LaGoyim, as the light unto the nations. And I think that as Jews, we are duty-bound to bring the laws of our Torah, our morality, to the rest of the world. So I have traveled the world from Argentina in the west to Japan in the east, and many, many European countries across the globe, as well as more recently to Morocco. I visited India a number of years ago. And India is the most fascinating place. It is a country that is composed of about 1.3 billion people. It's hard even to try and get one's head around that kind of number. which is comprised roughly of 80% of the population being Hindus, about 14% being Muslim, and the other 6% comprised of the Christians, and there are a number of Christian Indians, as we know, in Goa, which is a part of India which came under the influence of the Portuguese when they came to India centuries ago. There are also the Sikhs, there are Buddhists, and there are the Jains, 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 and they practice a religion of Jainism. And amongst that group of religions that one reads about on the internet, there is also the Jews, which is not frequently mentioned when you look at the statistics of India. And that's because when you're looking at a population of 1.3 billion, and you think that at its height in India there were probably only about 30 or 40 or 50,000 Jews, regrettably that doesn't become a significant statistic in looking at the demographics of a country. But having said that, the Jews of India have made an incredible contribution to the country despite their small size, and we will hopefully touch on some of these elements later. But there have been people in the military, Jews that have been in the military in India. There have been Jews that have had positions in government, and in fact the late Indira Gandhi, when there was a celebration at the synagogue in Cochin, she actually came and she spoke and she paid tribute to the incredible contribution that the Jews have made to India. I will be leading a tour as the scholar in residence for Eddie's Kosher Tours. That's EDDIES, Eddie's Kosher Tours, in October this year. And if anybody wants to find out about the tour, we have an itinerary. We will be going to India from the 15th of October 2018 to the 24th of October 2018. And you are welcome to email me on hugh@raichlin.coza. So that's my name, Hugh Raichlin, divided as follows: Hugh, Hugh, at raichlin.co.za. I will send you the itinerary, and you can go through it and see for yourself. The cost is $3,000, which includes absolutely everything: your hotel accommodation, land arrangements, etc. And the only thing it excludes are the air tickets to and from India. The first mention of the Jews in India actually is in the Bible itself, which let's say it's part of Tanakh as opposed to being in the Torah. In the book of Esther, which probably dates from the 2nd century BCE, mention is made of the decrees of the Persian monarch Xerxes, or known as Achashverosh, in the book of Esther. And it relates to the Jews being dispersed throughout the 127 provinces of his empire, which stretched from India into Ethiopia. And it talks about Mihoidu ad Kush, that it went from the place Hoidu, which is known as India, to Ethiopia. So that in itself is quite fascinating, that the connection of the knowledge of the Jewish people of India stretches back over 2,200 years. Now, in India there are 3 distinct groups of Jews. The most numerous of these groups are the Marathi-speaking Jews, who call themselves the Bnei Yisrael, which means the children of Israel of the Bible. And they have settled for many centuries on the west coast of India, a little south of Bombay Island, in the Konkan region of Maharashtra. At their maximum, in 1951, they numbered about 20,000 people, but by 1961, their number had fallen to about 16,000, and by 1971, their population was down to about 5,500 people. This massive fall over a period of about 20 years is due to immigration, mainly to the State of Israel, but partly in small numbers also to the United Kingdom, the United States of America, Canada, and Australia. The largest Indian community today on earth is the Israeli Indian community, which I understand is about 75,000 strong, and those are from the people that immigrated from India and have made a life for themselves and built up families in Israel. There is a smaller group than the Bnei Israel, and they are known as the Cochin Jews or the Cochinis. And these Jews originally settled in Cranganore and around in Malabar, and they lived there for many, many centuries. In the 15th century, they took shelter in the town of Cochin, and on our tour, we will be visiting Cochin, and there's still a beautiful synagogue in Cochin. And we will, in fact, be spending Shabbat in this beautiful, beautiful village, which still has a street known as the Street of the Jews, and, as I say, a functioning synagogue. In fact, a few years ago, I saw a documentary of a couple that had flown in, I think it was from Britain, to get married in the beautiful synagogue in Cochin because they had family connections back to India. The Cochini Jews never numbered more than about 2,500, but there are some that say that it was a slightly larger community. By 1951, their number had dropped to 370, and that was due to a mass exodus to Israel, which we discussed earlier with regard to the Bnei Israel. By 1971, their number had declined still further to about 112 people, and today there are just a handful of Jews still in India. It was mainly the old people that were left behind, and as they pass away, so there are fewer and fewer Jews in Cochin. The third group of Jews in India are the Jews from West Asia, mainly from Baghdad, that is Iraq, which is quite interesting because I mentioned that earlier as being the very origins of the Jewish people. So those Jews that came from Iraq came into India in the 19th century as traders or seekers of fortunes, and they came under the patronage of individuals who had preceded them and had started large businesses or industrial establishments in India. One of the most famous families to come into India was the Sassoon family, and in fact we have Sassoons in South Africa. And the Sassoon family also went from India to Hong Kong, and they have holdings all over the world. So these Baghdadi Jews, like the Sassoons and others from Baghdad, they came from Basra, Syria, Aden, Iran, and Afghanistan. So there were a whole group of people that would fall under that Baghdadi definition that came to India, and they settled mainly in Bombay, which is today Mumbai, and what was called Calcutta, which is now called Kolkata. And some of them settled in Pune, where they built a shul called the Magen David Synagogue, and that was built by the Sassoons. One of the reasons that the Baghdadi Jews, as they were called, came into India was because India was a British colony, and the Sassoons, many of them were British citizens and were very successful in Britain. And they went across to India and they contributed to the economy, and in fact they made significant contributions. There's a library in Mumbai. They contributed to the hospital in Mumbai, and they were very comfortable in India. What they were also comfortable with was that they could speak English, and because it was a British colony, many of the local Indians spoke to them in English. So that's why, as Englishmen, they were very comfortable. However, in contrast, the Cochini Jews spoke to their neighbors in the local dialect, as did the Bnei Israel. So the Baghdadi Jews were the most anglicized group that, as I say, fitted in very well with the fact that India was a British colony. We are now going to enjoy a few minutes of Indian music.
מה שהיה היה, מה שיהיה מחר מחר. היום עובר מהר, הכל נראה אחר, הנוף מאוד מוכר וזר וזר. וביד יש מזוודה קטנה שבה כמה חולצות ושרים רקמה, והלב רוצה לשיר אכן במה, הנה הנה היא כאן, והופ היא נעלמה. הכל מההתחלה, מילה אחרי מילה, פה רמלה זה לא מומביי מומביי. עובדת בקרים, פוגשת חברים, לומדת להגיד שלום וביי, ופתאום יש הזדמנות אחת אני אוספת את עצמי לאט הקול שלי בוער לראש כבר לא נשמע, לפני שזה פורץ לוקחת נשימה. מעלה יאללה נעלה למעלה הגיע יום חדש, הגיע יום חדש. מעלה יאללה נעלה למעלה הגיע יום חדש, הגיע יום הכל מההתחלה, מילה אחרי מילה, פה רמלה זה לא מומביי, עובדת בבקרים, פוגשת חברים, עומדת להגיד שלום וביי, ופתאום יש הזדמנות אחת אני אוספת את עצמי לאט שנים של אימונים ליום גדול, עכשיו שזה פורץ, נותנת את הכל. מעלה, יאללה נעלה למעלה הגיע יום חדש, הגיע יום חדש. מעלה, יאללה נעלה למעלה הגיע יום חדש, הגיע יום חדש. מעלה, יאללה נעלה למעלה הגיע יום חדש, הגיע יום חדש. מעלה, יאללה נעלה למעלה הגיע יום חדש, הגיע יום מעלה, יאללה נעלה למעלה הגיע יום חדש, הגיע יום חדש. מעלה, יאללה נעלה למעלה הגיע יום חדש, הגיע יום
I thought we would spend a few minutes just having a look at some of the highlights of our heritage tour to India in October. The first day we're going to be landing in Mumbai, so wherever people fly in from all over the world, we're going to be meeting in Mumbai. And after meeting, we're going to do a city tour of Mumbai. And I must tell you that I loved the traffic, I loved the people. And if you're going to come to India, you have to change your concept of the space and the etiquette that you might expect across the Western world. Because when we landed at the airport, you are hit, I guess that's the best word that I can use for the moment, with sound, smells, sights. It's just incredibly overwhelming. The smells are not unpleasant smells because there's spices, and there are people talking, and there are bicycles ringing their bells, and there are people honking, as they call it, honking on their hooters. There are big trucks, there are small trucks, there are cows walking across the road, there are little yellow taxis trying to weave their way between people, there are double-decker buses, there are chickens, there are all sorts of animals walking across the road. And to me, the most beautiful thing is just the acceptance of everybody of whatever else is happening around you. There's no road rage. In so many countries in the world, you get road rage where people get upset. Over there, if a cow walks across the road, everybody stops and they wait for the cow to cross, and then they carry on. And people don't get angry with one another. There's an accommodation. And I think that could possibly be the influence of the Hindu culture, which I really have such high regard for, in the beautiful peacefulness which they inculcate in people, and an acceptance of life and of others. And that has also stood good for the Jews in India, because the Hindu culture in particular always welcomed the Jews to India, and always respected them, and respected the fact that they maintained a separate religion, but accepted them in every respect as citizens of India and entitled to all the freedoms that anybody else would be entitled to. In Mumbai, there's the famous Dhobi Ghat, which is an enormous outdoor laundry. And it's something quite phenomenal to behold, because they have millions of pieces of garments, or millions of garments, that are being washed in separate troughs. These are all concrete troughs that have been standing there, I don't know, probably for centuries. And in each trough, there's a person standing there that's bare feet, and there's water in this trough with soapy water. And each person is taking massive bags of laundry, washing it, rinsing it, and then afterwards it's hung up to dry. And if you can just imagine, it's an enormous, I would say, the size of several football fields. And yet I'm told laundry does not go missing, despite this enormous operation which is going on. You then also will come across in Mumbai another fascinating social evolution of a business, and these are the Dabbawallas. And I actually bought a book on the Dabbawallas, and they were voted in the West as being one of the most, if not the most efficient business in the world. They have hundreds, perhaps thousands of couriers that will pick up a person's lunch from their home and make sure that it's delivered to their office by lunchtime. And they even have a delivery service now where they can pick up from restaurants and deliver thousands and thousands of meals across the city. And these are often young boys that will get on a bicycle, park the bicycle, get onto a bus, get off the bus, get onto a train. And in the most incredibly efficient way, they will be there by the time that you stipulate. And they seldom, if ever, make a mistake, get there late, or don't deliver a meal. It's something quite amazing to behold. So those are just two incredible sites in Mumbai. We will then visit the Sassoon docks, and I mentioned the Sassoon family earlier that came from Britain to India. And we will also visit the Magen David synagogue, which was built in 1861 in Mumbai by David Sassoon. There's also the Tiferet Yisrael synagogue and the Knesset Eliyahu synagogue. We'll be going to some of the beautiful Indian markets in the Crawford market, the Zaveri Bazaar, and the Kolaba Causeway. After that, we will be going on the following day, we'll be going to another part of Mumbai, which is the Gateway of India, that famous building which stands on the coast of India. And we will be boarding a motorboat to go to the Mandwa jetty, so we'll get a little bit of a feel and a perspective from the sea looking back onto the coast of Mumbai. In talking about Mumbai, I think it is appropriate that we also recall the murder by Muslim terrorists from Pakistan of Rabbi Gavriel and Rifki Holzberg. They were murdered on the 26th of November 2008, as well as other people that were at the Chabad house in Nariman Road in Mumbai. And the first trip that I did to India was a few months after that terrible, terrible tragedy. And we also recall the incredible miracle of how their son Moshe, who now lives with his grandparents in India, was saved by a wonderful Hindu lady by the name of Sandra Samuel. And she hid Moshe, who was a little baby at the time, I think he was 2 years old. She hid him in a cupboard in the kitchen while everybody else was being shot and before that tortured in Chabad house. And then she ran out into the street and saved his life. And she actually lives with Moshe in Israel. And I know that when Prime Minister Modi and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu got together in India, they were at a memorial and a ceremony in Mumbai 9 years after the event to pay tribute to the Holzbergs. And I think at the same time one should also pay tribute to all the Chabad emissaries all over the world. And I've certainly benefited from their hospitality wherever I've been, that they create a home from home, a place where Jews can go to virtually any country in the world and have a place to stay, a place to eat, a place to pray. After Mumbai, we're going to then be flying. There'll be an internal flight to Cochin. And in Cochin, we are going to see the very famous synagogue that we mentioned earlier, which has got beautiful lamps hanging from the ceiling, beautiful tiled floors. And we are going to then do a tour around the city or the town of Cochin to see how the Jews used to live amongst the population and traded and lived there in peace, harmony and security for several centuries. The town of Cochin has got many different influences. There are influences of the Dutch, the Portuguese, the British and the Jews that make this such a unique city. We're going to visit the old quarter of Fort Kochi and some of the quaint streets of the city on foot. And we're also going to go to the seaside promenade and get a glimpse of what life is like in Cochin. After Cochin, we will be going to a place called Munnar, that's Munnar, where we're going to see a beautiful range of mountains and beautiful tea plantations and spice plantations. We're going to go to the Tata Tea Museum to get a feel for the country itself, and that's what we always do when we do our tours. It's to meet the people, to see the local culture of every place that we go to. We're also going to go as an option, those people that would like to can go on a nature reserve drive to the Chittarapuram Nature Reserve and a hike through some tea plantations there. Or those that prefer not to go into the wild can enjoy some spa treatments at the hotel. Finally, we're going to a place called Ketuvulam. After breakfast, we'll be leaving that morning to Ketuvulam, and we're going to see some beautiful houseboats on the water with beautiful palm-hung waterways, and we're going to go into some of the backwater settlements to see the beautiful thatched and tiled cottages through a tropical paradise. Whoever wants to join me, you are welcome, as I say, to email me on hugh@raichlin.co.za, and you can also have a look at the Eddie's Kosher Travels website, which is Kosher Travelers with one L, koshertravelers.com. And we would be very, very happy to send you the itinerary and to welcome you aboard on a most wonderful and unforgettable trip to India. I also want to, at this point, thank again Isaac Resnick for inviting me onto the show today, and to Mr. Ilan Widiger, who has been doing the controlling for this particular broadcast. Thank you so much, Ilan, and thank you so much, Isaac.